What if your anxiety isn't trying to hurt you? It's trying to help. It's easy to think of anxiety as something we have to fight or fix or hide from others. But anxiety is part of being human. And when we stop running from it and start understanding it instead, everything begins to shift. Because when you listen to what your body's trying to tell you, that's when you can learn how to manage anxiety more effectively. In this episode, I'm going to talk you through what anxiety really is, why it shows up the way it does, and how you can deal with it in ways that support your well-being, instead of draining it. Because you deserve to feel less anxious and more in control. So, let's talk about dealing with anxiety. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk About Mental Health. I'm Jeremy Godwin. Thanks for joining me. If you're new here, I'm all about making better mental health simple. I don't just do this randomly though. I'm a counsellor and writer, but I also went through a total breakdown that led to years of severe depression and anxiety. I struggled to find the kind of tools I really needed back then, so now I create them. I share no-nonsense, practical advice that's based on both quality research and real experience of what actually works. So, let's talk. Have you ever felt completely fine one moment, and then suddenly your heart's racing, your mind is spinning, and you're caught in a wave of anxiety or panic for no obvious reason? Or maybe your anxiety is more of a constant hum in the background, keeping you on edge and making even the simplest of tasks feel absolutely exhausting. Either way, anxiety can feel like it's taking over. And when it does, it's not just uncomfortable, it's mentally and emotionally draining. But what would your life look like if anxiety wasn't running the show anymore? Well, today we're going to take a deep dive into how to deal with anxiety. This episode is all about practical and effective ways to take back your control when anxiety is trying to run the show. And it's also about understanding what's really going on when anxiety does show up. Not just in your head, but in your body and your nervous system as well. Because when you understand it, you can start to respond more calmly and clearly. And the sooner you start managing it intentionally, the less power it has over you. Throughout this episode, I'll be sharing simple ways that you can recognize anxiety for what it is in order to manage it in the moment. And I'll show you how to build habits that reduce its grip on you over time. As always, I draw from quality research for this stuff, but a lot of it also comes from my own personal experience of living with anxiety for nearly 15 years now, and having to learn the hard way what works and what doesn't. So whether anxiety is something you deal with occasionally, or if it's something that's been following you around for years, today's conversation is your reminder that you're not alone in all of this, and it is definitely possible to feel more grounded, calm, and in control. And throughout this episode, I'll teach you how. So let's get ourselves on the same page with some definitions, and let's talk about what is anxiety. Alright, so if there's one thing that can feel like it's completely overwhelming and all-encompassing when it kicks in, then it's that nasty, uncomfortable, jittery, overwhelming, panicky beast that we call anxiety. At its core, anxiety is a natural response to a perceived threat or danger. It's your brain and body shifting into survival mode to protect you. But while it's completely normal to feel anxious from time to time, problems start when that sense of danger gets triggered too easily or too often, or when it sticks around long after the threat is gone. If it's not addressed and managed, then anxiety doesn't just evaporate into the ether. It tends to build and build, becoming more intense and a lot more disruptive over time. That's why learning how to deal with it proactively is so important, because ignoring it or pushing it down doesn't make it go away. It just gives it more space to grow. Now, when I say dealing with anxiety, I definitely don't mean just pushing through it with a forced smile while internally screaming like that meme of the dog in the burning room saying, "This is fine." Dealing with anxiety is about learning to face it, understand it, and respond to it in ways that actually support your mental health, instead of just masking the symptoms with unhealthy coping mechanisms and dodgy choices. It's about getting better at recognizing when anxiety shows up and knowing how to manage your response to it, and building habits that help to reduce its intensity and frequency over time. It's not about somehow never feeling anxious again, if only, but instead it's about not letting your anxiety control your day or your life. Because the truth is, anxiety is something that nearly all of us will experience at some point. It's part of being human. And when it kicks in, it can feel like constant background noise, or sometimes a full-blown air raid siren. And it likes to constantly remind you of all the things you might have done wrong, or could potentially do wrong, or that might possibly, maybe, could go wrong at some point in the future. Because who doesn't love laying awake at night, stressing out over possible futures that may or may not happen, right? Anxiety can show up as restlessness, tension, a racing heart, or that horrible knot in your stomach. For some people, it's a tight chest and shallow breathing. For others, it's overthinking everything to the point where even minor decisions can feel like a major life choice. Anxiety isn't just worrying or being a bit stressed. It's a full body, full mind experience that can affect how you think, feel, and behave. It can make you feel like you're not safe, even when there's no actual danger. It can keep you stuck in a loop of second-guessing yourself, avoiding situations that make you uncomfortable, or feeling like you have to be constantly on just to hold it all together. And if that's sounding a bit too familiar, then please know you're not the only one. It doesn't mean you're broken or weak. It just means your brain's trying to protect you. It's just doing it a little too enthusiastically. So, what does dealing with anxiety really look like in a practical sense? Well, it's different for everyone, but generally it means taking small, intentional steps to stop anxiety from dominating your day. That might mean learning how to spot your early warning signs so you can interrupt the spiral before it takes over. It might be putting boundaries in place around things that trigger your anxiety, like certain people or places, or even the constant news cycle. Because seriously, doom scrolling at 10 p.m. is not self-care, no matter how justified it may feel. It might also mean creating daily habits that serve to calm your nervous system. Things like deep breathing, sleep, moving your body, or journaling. Or maybe it involves speaking to someone about what's going on so you're not trying to carry it all alone. And then, from a mental health point of view, dealing with anxiety means recognizing it for what it is, a natural response to a perceived threat or uncertainty. It's your brain and body doing their job by trying to keep you safe. And so you need to learn how to manage it if and when it happens. When we talk about better mental health, we're not aiming for a life that's completely free of stress or discomfort, because that's just not realistic. What we're aiming for is resilience, the ability to navigate life's ups and downs without becoming completely overwhelmed by them. Dealing with anxiety is a big part of that. It's about learning how to respond thoughtfully rather than just reacting on pure emotions. And it's about regulating your emotions so you can feel more grounded and more in control, even when life gets messy. So, why does anxiety happen? So, of all the things that our brains are hardwired to do, one of its favorite pastimes is keeping you safe. And I don't mean in a gentle, wrap you in a warm hug kind of way. I mean constantly scanning the horizon for danger, even when there's nothing particularly threatening going on. That's where anxiety comes in. Anxiety is essentially your brain's built-in alarm system, and it's a very ancient one. It evolved to protect you from very real and immediate threats, like saber-toothed tigers or falling off cliffs. But in modern life, that system often gets triggered by things that feel threatening, even if they're not actually physically dangerous, like public speaking, making a mistake at work, relationship issues, or just trying to get everything done in the space of a day. So what's actually happening when anxiety kicks in? It starts in the brain, specifically in a part called the amygdala, which kind of acts a bit like a smoke detector. When it senses something that might be dangerous, it sends out an alert and triggers your body's stress response, flooding your system with stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol, often before you've even consciously registered the threat. Your heart rate increases, your breathing gets faster, your muscles tense up, and your body prepares itself for danger. Now, this is absolutely brilliant if you're in a life or death situation and need to run away or defend yourself. But it's not quite so helpful when you're just trying to reply to an email or go to the supermarket. Your logical brain does try to step in and calm things down, but it's slower than the amygdala. So if your anxiety is running high or it's happening often, that rational part can get drowned out. This constant state of high alert takes a real toll on your mental health. It's not just uncomfortable, it's exhausting. Your brain and body aren't designed to stay in fight or flight mode all the time, and yet that's exactly what can happen when anxiety becomes chronic. Over time, it can lead to issues like poor sleep, irritability, difficulty concentrating, emotional burnout, and even depression. Because you're not just dealing with an occasional worry anymore, you're constantly managing a sense of threat or unease, and that makes it really hard to feel calm, connected, or in control. You might start to avoid things that trigger anxiety, which can shrink your world. Or you might become hyperproductive, always on the go to avoid sitting still, because sitting still means dealing with those uncomfortable feelings. And it's not just emotional. Anxiety can affect your physical well-being too. It can contribute to muscle tension, stomach issues, headaches, and fatigue. It can make everyday decisions feel overwhelming and make you doubt yourself constantly, even when you're doing fine. And over time, it chips away at your sense of safety in the world. That's why anxiety is such a big deal when it comes to mental health, because it doesn't just affect how you feel, it affects how you live. Ignoring anxiety won't make it go away. In fact, it usually makes it worse. But when you take steps to understand it and respond to it in healthier ways, you start to break the cycle of fear and overthinking. You feel more emotionally regulated and less like you're constantly being hijacked by your own nervous system. And most importantly, you regain a sense of control. Not because anxiety disappears completely, but because it stops calling the shots. The benefit of facing it is that you start to get your peace of mind back. And really, that's what this is all about. So then, how do you do that? Well, let's talk through some practical ways to approach it, but first, a quick break to hear from the brands who help me create this show each week. And welcome back. Now let's talk about how to deal with anxiety. Okay, first, recognize when anxiety is happening and name it. The very first step in dealing with anxiety effectively is simply to notice it. That might sound really obvious, but a lot of people live with a constant low-level hum of anxiety without ever really naming it. They just feel irritable, restless, overwhelmed, or exhausted and chalk it up to being busy or tired. But anxiety thrives in vagueness. When you bring it into focus and say, "This is anxiety," you take away some of its power because it shifts you into greater self-awareness. You can do this by paying attention to your early warning signs, whether that's a racing mind, a tense jaw, or feeling like your skeleton wants to run away from your own skin. And you can say something simple to yourself like, "Okay, I can feel anxiety showing up." That simple act of acknowledgement is surprisingly powerful. Okay, next, get curious about your triggers without judgment. One of the most powerful things you can do is start paying attention to when anxiety shows up. Not to shame yourself or overanalyze, but to get genuinely curious. Is it always around certain people, certain places, before a specific task, after a specific activity? Anxiety isn't always random. It often has patterns. When you can spot the situations, thoughts, or even times of day that regularly spark it, you can start to plan ahead and respond with more awareness rather than getting caught off guard. You don't have to solve it all at once, just start noticing. Next, ground yourself in the present moment. Anxiety likes to drag your focus into the future. What if this happens? What if that goes wrong? But the future doesn't exist yet. Only this moment right now does. Grounding is a simple way to bring your attention back to the present. One easy method you can use is the 5-4-3-2-1 technique. Name 5 things you can see, 4 you can feel, 3 you can hear, 2 you can smell, and 1 you can taste. You can also feel your feet on the floor, or take a few deep breaths, or hold something cold in your hands. It gives your brain something concrete to focus on, and it interrupts the spiral of anxious thoughts. Okay, next, breathe intentionally and slowly. Anxiety speeds up your breathing, which tells your brain that something's wrong, and that makes things worse. Slow breathing helps to reverse that message. Try the 4-4-6 method. Inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 6. You can do this anywhere, while you're driving, when in a meeting, or even as you're brushing your teeth. It signals to your nervous system that things are safe, and it helps to calm you from the inside out. Alright, next, speak out loud to yourself. Seriously. It might sound odd, but saying calming things to yourself out loud can be incredibly grounding. When anxiety ramps up, your inner voice often turns critical and maybe even nasty. Speaking out loud interrupts that loop. You might say something like, "I feel anxious right now, but I know what to do." Or, "This is uncomfortable, not dangerous." It really helps to bring you back into the moment, and it reminds you who's in charge, which is you, by the way, not your anxious thoughts. Okay, next, do something physical to shift your state of mind. Movement burns off the excess physical energy that anxiety builds up thanks to the way it floods your system with adrenaline and cortisol. Even a quick walk, some stretching, or body popping your way around your living room like a maniac can help your body to reset. This really helps because anxiety isn't just in your head, it's in your body too. And when you move your body, you move your mood. Alright, next, challenge your anxious thoughts. Anxiety often sounds like, "I can't cope," or "they're judging me." But just because you think something, that doesn't make it true. Ask yourself, is this thought based on fact or fear? Would I say this to a friend? This helps to separate yourself from the anxiety and it allows you to respond consciously with a lot more clarity and compassion. Next, remind yourself, this feeling will pass. When anxiety hits, it can feel like it's here to stay, but no feeling lasts for forever. You might find it helpful to say to yourself, this is a feeling, not a fact, and it will pass. Visualize it like a wave that rises, peaks, and eventually eases. That reminder alone can help you ride it out with more calm and perspective. Okay, next, be kind to yourself when anxiety shows up. Most people tend to react to anxiety with frustration or shame, but choosing to be kind to yourself is a far more powerful and compassionate choice. Anxiety is just your brain saying, I'm overwhelmed. Instead of criticizing yourself for that, try saying, this is hard, but I'm doing my best. That small shift in tone helps to soften the intensity of the anxiety, and it opens the door to feeling more grounded. Next, create a reset routine. Anxiety can build up over the day without you realizing it's happening. Having a consistent reset routine helps to release some of that pressure. It doesn't need to be anything fancy or elaborate. Just 5 minutes to stretch, step outside, scribble in a notebook, or sit quietly. The aim here is to allow yourself space to press pause regularly before stress and anxiety builds into burnout. Okay, next, allocate a worry window. And no, I'm not talking about heading down to your local drive-through fast food restaurant and unloading all your anxiety on them. I mean to have a specific time of day where you allow yourself to deal with your worries, but only at that time. Look, if you try to suppress your anxious thoughts, they usually just get louder. So instead, give them a dedicated time slot. Set aside 10 to 15 minutes a day to sit with your worries. Write them down or speak them out loud, and if you can, consider what your options are for tackling them. When the time's up, gently move on. If a worry pops up outside of that time, remind yourself that you have a dedicated time for dealing with these sorts of thoughts. This helps to contain your anxiety so it doesn't bleed into your whole day. Alright, next, journal your thoughts. Writing things down gets them out of your head and out into the open. It can be as simple as a short brain dump, or making a list of issues you need to deal with, or just writing out a few calming thoughts. You don't need to be eloquent and well-written here. The act of journaling is just for you, and it's about creating distance, perspective, and relief. Okay, next, break the loop with gentle distraction. Sometimes the best way to calm your anxiety is to give your brain something else to do. A gentle distraction, like a light and comforting TV show, or doing a small chore, or working on a puzzle, can interrupt the spiral of anxious thoughts. It's not about avoiding the feeling, it's about giving your nervous system an opportunity to settle. Alright, next, focus on what's within your control. Anxiety absolutely thrives on uncertainty. One way to feel steadier is to focus on what you can control. Your breath, your tone of voice, your next small step. Try writing out a list of what you can control and what you can't. It's a reminder that you're not helpless and that small actions still count. Next, limit overstimulation, especially from screens and relentless noise. Your nervous system needs quiet, and modern life rarely offers it. Notifications, headlines, scrolling, it's a lot. Reducing background noise and screen time, even for a short while, gives your mind space to breathe. It doesn't have to be silence. Just do what you can to reduce the chaos and noise. Okay, next, monitor your inputs. Look, I know I say this a lot in my episodes, but the fact is that what you take in, whether it's through social media, news, conversations, and interactions with other people, all affects how you feel. If you're constantly consuming stressful or triggering content, or you're regularly exposed to negative people, then it's no wonder anxiety is flaring up. So, curate what you're exposed to and be intentional about what makes you feel anxious versus what doesn't. Follow accounts that uplift you. Take regular breaks from the news and notice what and who actually leaves you feeling better. Next, set small, realistic goals. When you're anxious, even basic tasks can feel impossible. So, break things down. Pick one small, achievable goal. Send the email, fold the washing, step outside for 2 minutes. Whatever it is, that little win can help to shift you out of anxious paralysis and back into motion and feeling in control. Okay, next, practice saying no without guilt. A full schedule can fuel your anxiety quicker than a real housewife can turn on another real housewife. If you're regularly overcommitting to things in order to please others, then learning to say no kindly and clearly is an absolute must. It's not about being selfish, it's about protecting your peace. Your time and energy are finite, so use them well. Next, talk to someone you trust. Anxiety can be incredibly isolating. Speaking to someone like a friend, a partner, a counselor, or a therapist can help you feel less alone. You don't need them to give you solutions, just connection. Saying, "I've been feeling anxious, can I talk it through with you?" can be enough to lift the weight. And chances are they'll understand more than you think. You'd be surprised by just how common anxiety really is. Because when it comes to dealing with anxiety, what it all boils down to is this. Anxiety doesn't get to make the decisions, you do. It may feel like anxiety's running the show sometimes, but it doesn't get to write the whole story for you. You do. And when you start choosing to deal with anxiety intentionally, instead of just putting up with it, that's when you begin to reclaim your peace of mind, bit by bit. It's not about having to be fearless or never feeling anxious again. It's about building the tools, the mindset, and the habits that help you feel more grounded, more in control, and more able to handle whatever life throws your way. Because the more you choose to work with your anxiety instead of against yourself, the stronger and more resilient you become. The choice is yours, as it is with all things related to your well-being. So, what choice will you make today? Each week I like to finish up by sharing a quote about the week's topic, and I encourage you to take a few moments to really reflect on it and consider what it means to you. This week's quote is by the writer Dan Millman, and it is, "You don't have to control your thoughts. You just have to stop letting them control you." Let me repeat that. You don't have to control your thoughts. You just have to stop letting them control you. Alright, that's nearly it for this week. What would your life look like if anxiety wasn't calling the shots anymore? Let me know in the comments and let's talk, because the more we talk about it, the easier it gets. Join my free mailing list at ltamh.com to stay up to date with new episodes and more. And become a supporter on Patreon for early access to ad-free episodes and exclusive content. They're both linked in the episode description. Thank you very much for joining me today. Look after yourself and make a conscious effort to share positivity and kindness out into the world, because you get back what you put out. Take care and talk to you next time. You might also find my recent episode about managing stress helpful, so check it out next. It's linked in the episode description. Next week, I'll be talking about why being authentic is the key to better mental health. Follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode, and have a great week. Let's Talk About Mental Health is an independent program. Discover more at ltamh.com.